and that group is growing and becoming more educated, from what you can see.
Well, you know, I hear people say, and I do completely understand it, why aren't more people waking up? And I think, you should have been with me in 1990, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, and so on. What is happening today is extraordinary. Because, you know...
When he says wake up, he doesn't mean this whole woke crap. No. You know the old saying, wake up and smell the coffee? That wake up. Wake up and see what's before your eyes. Wake up and smell the burning coffee before you. Wake up, smell the smoke to see the fire. That wake up, not this woke, broke crap that the saying that they were using. They've been trying to flip English on its very head and alter what words mean. Don't fall for it.
People say you predicted this and it's happened, you predicted that and it's happened. My response is, yeah, but that wasn't the idea. The idea was to alert enough people to stop it happening. But you knew all along that it had to get so bad and so in people's faces that they couldn't ignore it anymore. Because who wants to face this stuff? Who wants to turn their life attention to it? They want to bring their kids up. They want to look after their families. They want to have a good time. Of course they do. They don't want to do that. And if they have a getaway car in the mind where they feel they don't have to address that, like, oh yeah, it's just that Ike, it's just a theory, it's a conspiracy theory. Just shut up, he's done what he's talking about. No, it never happened, all that stuff. But when it's here, and the COVID era has put it here, then you either do what the first two groups do, or you address it. Because you've got no choice, really. And what's happened, despite all the censorship, which has been hysterical, and it's not been hysterical censorship because of the power of this cult, it's been hysterical censorship because of the weakness of this cult and the weakness of its narrative. The only way its narrative, ludicrous, could be defended is if those that were unraveling it were silenced. But despite all that, the information still got out there. Yeah. And people have got more and more streetwise about, A, what the agenda is, where the world's being taken, and crucially about the techniques that are used to take us there, and they're all psychological. Because the few cannot control the many physically. Impossible. They want to do that by connecting the population to AI, so AI becomes the human mind, then they can do that. But up to that point, they can't. The only way the few can control the many, the vast many, is by controlling the perception of the many, which becomes the behavior of the many. And this is the stadium in which the whole damn conspiracy is played out. Human perception. You get human perception, you've got human behavior. What is collective human behavior? It's human society. Where does human perception come from? It comes from information received. So if you can control the information that people receive through censorship and through the education system, what laughably passes for it, and through all these sources of so-called information, you can impose that perception that suits you, which becomes the behavior, which becomes human society. So if we look at the what happened with so-called COVID, the perception was that there's a deadly virus and we're all in mortal danger. That perception led to people meekly going under house arrest without question. If you had a different perception, which is the one I had,
Heck, my perception, the moment they use the word lockdown, my first thought is, excuse me, are we all fucking inmates? Because you use the word lockdown in jails. So totally, he's right. Your perception changes everything.
Hey, look alive, hotshot.
So if we look at the what happened with so-called COVID, the perception was that there's a deadly virus and we're all in mortal danger. That perception led to people meekly going under house arrest without question. If you had a different perception, which is the one I had, then you thought, sod that, I'm not doing any of it. Because if you ask me to do moronic things and I do them, then I'm a frickin' moron, and I'm not. So I didn't social distance. I didn't not go out because I was told I couldn't. I didn't wear a face nappy. I'll die first. I never even had that stupid bloody thing on your bloody head with your temperature. I won't do it. I will not play a part in my own enslavement and my children's enslavement. I will not do it. So I had a different perception. So my behavior was completely different. Why my perception was different? This is the stadium in which it's been played out. So what's happened in the last 2 years is the perceptions of vast and increasing numbers of people have changed. They have started to see the world is not controlled by the forces they thought that they were, like governments and prime ministers and presidents. And they've started to see the techniques of manipulation. They've started to see where we're being taken. And the result is that ever larger numbers of people are behaving differently because they're perceiving differently. And this is making it far, far harder for authority to sell its agenda. Because if you look at what's happened, particularly in England, where this rollback suddenly happened out of nowhere.
Should we begin then?
In terms of, you will have noticed this, in terms of great numbers of people, that the authorities have lost them. They're not frightened anymore, right? Not only are they not frightened anymore, they have started to suss what's been going on. You've been lying to us to make us frightened, so we'll do what you want us to do. And what you want us to do is nothing to do with health. It's about imposing this ever-gathering imposition of tyranny. And when you lose people in terms of fear, it's very difficult, too, to get them back. And, you know, it's great what's just been announced in England.
Yeah, I fear nothing, not even death itself. The day I die, I'll finally be able to rest and drink in the halls of Valhalla. Way different perspective.
Fenchurch does the exploring. I make the deals.
Greetings.
There is nothing to fear but fear itself.
A prepared soldier is a victorious soldier.
I'd rather die being moral than die being a coward. After all, I come from a bloodline that's long, long old. Goes back to 9 AD and beyond. Many of you might know our stories of Teutonberg. I'm kin to Herman the German. I'm not afraid of my history. I learn about my history, my heritage, my culture. It made me who I am today.
I always find it odd and perverse that there are still sort of pro-communist people in the world after the examples of the 20th century.
I agree totally with that. I couldn't agree with you more.
It's perverse to me. But I think, I don't know, because I'm not a psychologist, but my sort of armchair amateur's view would be that, I suppose, it's just easier. It's difficult to think for yourself. It takes a bit of time and a bit of perspective. It's easier just to say to yourself that someone's already got to the final perfect answer.
Yes.
And it was, let's say, Marx and Engels. They've already done all the thinking.
Yes.
That's already been done for us. So just whatever they said, whatever they wrote, doesn't have to be Marx or Engels. Could be, could be anyone. Could be Evola. It doesn't have to be left wing even. But someone's already done that for me.
Yes.
All I need to do is follow their precepts to the letter.
Yeah.
And that's it. Regardless if that's sort of against common sense, regardless if it's against my own interests. I just think it's lazy isn't really the right word, but it's just easier to do that. I think.
Do you think that there
it's
could
scary to think for yourself and have contradictions in your own mind and all that sort of thing?
It is definitely time-consuming, but I wonder whether there is an issue of diffidence. There are some people who are really, really, really scared of having a voice, and they're really afraid of other people who are very bombastic about theirs. And I think this could have been the case in people, for instance, like Marx. He was he seemed so dead certain about what he thought. And I wonder whether that is something that made people think that, well, I don't feel this way, he does, maybe he's special.
Right, yeah, absolutely. The thing that springs to mind when you've said that is I'm thinking of the Protestant Reformation.
Yeah.
One of the things I was watching a documentary recently, and they were talking about Martin Luther, some of the early Lutherans, and how absolutely certain they were. Very, very, very dogmatic, absolutely 100% certain about their view of God and Christ.
Yes.
Things. To the point where, to the modern mind, it almost seems a bit mad. But yeah, with people, if you're not 100% confident in your own worldview and your own opinions, then someone like that can very, very easily just bowl you over. Bombastic is a great word.
Yes.
You can very, very easily just, defer your own thoughts and feelings.
Exactly.
They're so sure about themselves, about their view. They must be correct, at least on some level. They're certainly more correct than me and all my inner contradictions.
Yes.
I think a lot of people, unfortunately, a lot of people in the world are susceptible to that. It's like classic Jedi mind tricks.
Yes.
They work on people. If you're just told in no uncertain terms that this is the correct view, then for a lot of people they will just accept it. It's unfortunate, really. But there it is.
It's very unfortunate, and I'm trying to understand a bit why it takes place. And I think that it is important to approach people who think this way and try to have a conversation with them. That is why I think free speech is very important to maintain. And it seems to me that it's important not to approach them in the way that ideologues do, in the way that, for instance, if you disagree with us, you are a bad person. This is what I sense every time I read a Marxist text, that I sense this idea that if you disagree with what I'm writing, you're a bad person.
You're on the wrong side of history, yeah.
Yes, and I think that it is not important to... it is important not to be this way. And I think one of the issues that... one of the ways I'm trying to, I think, explains ideological thinking is that people have the need to somehow find their place in the world and somehow connect the dots. And it seems to me that ideologies are easy ways in which this can happen. But the price of ideology is truth and judgment.
Yeah.
So
I'd just like to say something on
Yeah, of
that
course.
quickly. I think it's a deep down in lots, not everyone in the world, but in most people, I think, most intelligent thinking people, to understand, just simply that, just to understand what's going on and have a framework in your mind that makes some kind of sense. And yes, ideologies are great for that.
Yeah.
That's why it's interesting you talked about the Socratic principle right at the beginning, because I'm a quite a big fan of Socrates.
Yes.
And the way Socrates thought about the world. And he, in all sorts of ways, is the opposite of that. He would say things like, he would just constantly question everything, including, essentially, ideology. Why do you think that? Why have you come to that conclusion? Is that correct, though?
Yes.
That's what got him in trouble, really. To be aware of how little you know, to be aware of how sort of fragile and potentially possibly wrong the ideologies and frameworks are in your own mind. That there's a very, very definite limit to the knowledge you've got rolling around inside your head. Be aware of that.
Yes.
Don't be dogmatic.
Exactly.
I think that's very, very powerful.
It is, and Socrates is basically aware of his own fallibility in a way that ideologues are not. Because, and it is not...
Most investments fail, and one of the big reasons that things fail in enterprise is the products are not societally relevant. If you build a non-societally relevant product, you're going to have to compete with a company that is really...
It is not strictly coincidental that this way of thinking is a bad form of rationalism, because we have people who just say, I cognize social universals, this is the way history is going, and I don't need to basically pay attention to facts. If facts are contrary to the theory, so worse for the facts.
Yeah,
I think that's...
People in the Austrian school, or Hegel, lots of philosophers say things like that.
Yes.
Don't worry about the facts. We've figured it out ideologically.
Yes.
So don't worry about facts anymore.
It wasn't a ripe historical moment.
Right, yeah.
So, and this is the ideological aspect of the positive tradition, that we have this large metaphysical construct that involves the distinction between the true self, with the rational self, and, on the other hand, the lower and empirical self, that basically distorts common sense. But fortunately, I think there is another tradition, and it's the Republican tradition, that conceives of freedom as non-domination. Now, we will speak a bit more about this, but it's important to say how this came about. So, the Cold War was an intensely ideological period, and there was this promise to think that, it's us versus them, West versus East. West is all about negative liberty, East is all about positive liberty, which basically is tyranny. That was the way that it was presented. But
quite often the West was called the free world.
Yes. Yes.
America is the free world.
Yes, and we have this emphasis on free markets and civil liberties. So there were some historians who, like John Pocock and Quentin Skinner, who revitalized what is called the Republican tradition. And they said that Berlin's distinction between two kinds of freedom isn't accurate, or at least it does not exhaust all kinds of freedom. And they also said that Benjamin Constant understanding of the distinction between the liberty of the moderns and the liberty of the ancients was unsophisticated. So this tradition conceives of freedom as non-domination, and it is important to understand that it is linked to both the negative and the positive tradition, but its supporters think that it is a bit different. So the main idea is non-domination, and non-domination is not the same thing as non-interference. Non-domination is supposed to be the enjoyment of a sphere of activities within which one is not arbitrarily interfered with. So let us unpack this slowly. The Republicans draw inspiration from ancient Greece and ancient Rome, and particularly from the writings of historians like Tacitus. They are interested in the idea of arbitrary rule. And they say that being dominated is to be in a relationship that is master and slave-like, in a master and slave relationship. And they say that if it can be the case that a master is benevolent. In that case, though, we are not free. So if we are slaves of a benevolent master, we do enjoy a sphere of activities that are free from interference, but all of that is subject to the arbitrary will or whim of the master.
He might take away that non-interference at any moment.
Exactly. And they think that in order to respect citizens and respect persons as free persons, there have to be institutional, institutions that safeguard liberty as non-domination, which means that we shouldn't live in a society of masters and slaves. How do you think about this concept of non-domination? Because it's an interesting concept, and just like any other concept, it is very susceptible to distortion. We will talk about this in a minute, but how does it strike you when you hear about it, you know?
Well, straight away, I'm a big fan of Tacitus. He's my favourite ancient historian, and he does talk about the loss of liberty and the nature of freedom quite a lot.
Yes.
Without really drilling down to it in a sort of a modern philosophical sense of what he means. But just to say a few words about Tacitus, he lived through the age of the Emperor Domitian.
Yes.
I'm not sure if that's where we actually get the word domination from, but he lived through the age of Domitian. He was famously a tyrant, and just very quickly to say, the ancient world used the word tyrant and tyranny quite differently to we do. It's purely negative in our world. In the ancient world, it didn't necessarily mean that. It just meant an autocrat. He might be benevolent. Anyway, Domitian certainly wasn't benevolent. He brought in, there was all sorts of political killings, all sorts of political repression, and something like an informer state. Everyone was supposed to inform on each other if there's any sort of wrong thing going on. You suspected your neighbours, or certainly of saying anything sort of subversive or dangerous in any way. So Tacitus lived through that and wrote about it afterwards, probably in the age of Hadrian. And he says, and he also writes about some emperors in the generations before Domitian, emperors like Tiberius, Caligula, Nero, arguably even worse tyrants. And he talks about the loss of freedom, the Roman citizens' loss of freedom. There's a famous line when it's actually talking about people that the Romans had conquered, and when the Romans brought them what seemed like freedoms, things like a good economy and a marketplace and nice clothes and wine and nice houses and things. He said because they didn't know any better, they called it civilization when it was in fact part of their slavery. So yeah, you might have a master who is actually really effectively nice, gives you loads of nice things, makes your standard of living higher, doesn't really force anything upon you, and yet he remains your master, absolutely.
Yes. And
he's at liberty to take that, playing around with words now, but he can take that away from you at any moment. He's got that liberty, not you. So are you truly free then? It's a very interesting concept.
To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.
one of the phrases I use is, you know, spirituality, true spirituality, comes with a spine. Because true spirituality knows that it's all that is, has been, and ever can be. And no matter what happens here in this brief experience called human, it will always be all that is, has been, and ever can be. So therefore, the consequences of doing what you know to be right cease to be part of the conversation. Because whatever happens to you for doing what you know to be right, you are still all that is, has been, and ever can be. And this is just a brief, not that much experience called human. And what it means is these people that work, because they have no power except the power we give to them, they have to intimidate us into giving them our power. When you're not intimidated by them, I think they're a bunch of prats. You know, I mean, oh dear. Brain cell activity. Anyway, because you're not intimidated by them, they have no power over you. Just think about it. Anyone just think about it. Why do you do things that authority tells you? For one of two reasons. You're group number one, you do it because you unquestionably do whatever authority tells you. But number two, a massive group, that group needs to move over here to the real renegade group. But this group does it because it's intimidated, because it's frightened of not doing it.
You're fighting today?
So enormous numbers of people obey authority because they're frightened of not doing it, because they're thinking consequences. When you get into this reevaluation of your self-identity, I am consciousness having a brief experience called human, and what happens in this brief experience happens, but I'm all that is, has been, and ever can be, infinitely exploring forever, no matter what happens here. The intimidation's gone. Right. We'll kill you. But I'm still not obeying you. Do it. But what you find is when you get into this space of awareness, expanded awareness, and self-identity awareness, true self-identity awareness, the consequences don't happen in the same way.
It's so hard to get normal people there, Dave.
I know, but we need to get there, though.
Because of the programming.
Yeah, see, this is the point. People in this expanded state of awareness, and it's not Buddha sitting under a tree, it's everybody. I don't care what you do and how powerless you think you are all that is, has been, and ever can be having an experience. Your sense of powerlessness is your programmed perception of your human experience. It's not who you are. But if you are trying to, you know this, if you know that if people go into this expanded state of awareness, game, set, and match, it's over, which it would be, not least because the intimidation's gone, then if you're going to control billions of people, like I say, you've got to do it perceptually, but you've got to hold them in a sense of human self-identity. You've got to get them to perceive themselves, their I, as the label, the five-sense label. Because once you identify with the labels of a human life, what are you immediately identifying with? Limitation. I can't. It's not possible. I have no power. So the whole of the system is set up to get people to self-identify with the labels of a human life. And if you notice this, as this process goes on of going towards this end game, they are working to subdivide the previous labels into smaller and smaller labels of what? Self-identity. So you now have LGBTQ, and on it goes. You want to see some of the letters that some universities in America use? You know, which one are you? Well, none of them, actually, or actually all of them, right? So what is that doing? That's taking the old labels human labels to identify with limitation, and I can't, and it's not possible, and I have no power. And it's subdividing them. So now, so many people, a lot of young people, nothing like all mine, self-identify the I, not with all that is, has been, and ever can be, having a brief human experience, but with their chosen sexuality. Who are you? I'm my sexuality. No, you're not. That's your experience. Do you think you're going to be, that sexuality when you leave the body? That sexuality relates to the body. It's a human experience. Enjoy it if you like. What your sexuality is, I couldn't care less, so long as you don't impose it on anyone else. But that's not who you are. Your race, it's not who you are. What is your race? Well, it's my body, yes. So when you leave the body at the end of this life, you're not going to be that race anymore, are you? The race you identify with is the human body race. It's a vehicle, it's an experience, it's not you.
The greedy bankers are about to do it again. In 2008, they crashed our financial system and nearly bankrupted the entire global economy. Then, they received trillions of dollars in government bailouts. And after, they demanded fat bonuses paid for by you, the taxpayer.
It turns out the banks haven't just been screwing the American taxpayers, they're also screwing over their investors. Turns out the banking industry is the worst place you could put your money, despite enormous taxpayer bailouts.
Now the bankers are back to take away your financial freedom. They lie and tell you that cryptocurrency isn't safe. They try to make it illegal for you to choose how to invest your hard-earned money. They lie and say cryptocurrency is used by money launderers and criminals. But look at the record. It's the banks themselves that launder hundreds of billions of dollars every year to the biggest criminal operations in the world.
Leaked documents have revealed how some UK banks have helped criminals, money launderers, and Russians under sanctions.
American authorities discovered that the Sinaloa cartel moved $881 million through HSBC accounts as bank officials turned a blind eye to the illegality.
The bankers lie and say cryptocurrency is not a real investment. Meanwhile, the smartest CEOs in the world are buying billions and billions of it. The truth is that banks lie about cryptocurrency because it makes them scared. The banks take $9 trillion per year of your hard-earned money, and they are worried that they will finally be exposed. They're scared because crypto means they can no longer control your money, which means they can no longer control you. They are scared because you might actually understand your money and intelligently decide what to do with it. Now is the time for us to come together, fight back, and take control. It's time to educate ourselves, our families, and our communities. Because financial education means financial freedom. We know that cryptocurrencies will help us build the new decentralized financial system of the future. A banking system that is of the people, by the people, and for the people. A banking system where access to finance is a fundamental human right. A banking system that is free and fair and welcomes all humans on this earth. The DeFi revolution is happening. We, the people, can no longer be fooled. We choose to take control of our finances. We choose to take control of our freedom. We choose to take control of our future. Join us, and let's take back our financial freedom forever.
Watch your back. Invader incoming. Convoy's taking a dirt nap. Primeval time. nearly dead. Brother, you've got some news. Look at all those moats, packed tight and shiny. You get paid
No
today.
way. It's you, dumbass Combat Wombat. Remember me, dumbass? From another game? You think you know everything, but you really don't know much at all.
Each month, we upload a new video for our members. The following is the video for December. By purchasing an Academy of Ideas membership, you will get access to over 70 more videos like this, including a 4-part series on how to unleash your potential, and a 3-part series on cultivating heroic manhood. Sign up now and get instant access to all our premium content. Learn more at academyofideas.com/members. I am body entirely, and nothing beside. Many people spend more time staring at screens than interacting with the real world. Hour upon hour, day after day. It is just eyes and ears that act as inputs and mouths and fingers that act as outputs. We are a population, in the words of the author Matthew Walker, whose minds are elsewhere than our bodies. In this video, we are going to explore how excessive use of screen-based technologies, be it televisions, computers, smartphones, or social media, disconnects us from our body and pushes us toward a schizophrenic-like manner of experiencing the world. The distinction between mind and body is an artificial dichotomy, writes Carl Jung. The continuity of nature knows nothing of those antithetical distinctions, which the human intellect is forced to set up as aids to understanding. In a state of optimal health, we are firmly rooted in our body, and body and mind are experienced as a unitary phenomenon, not as separate entities.
On the horizon.
However, the connection between the body and the mind can become disrupted, and when it does, we say that one is disembodied. In a state of disembodiment, we do not feel that we are a body, but that we possess a body. Instead of being firmly rooted in our body, we feel alienated from it, and we tend to view the body not as an integral part of our selfhood, but as a thing, or collection of things, that we carry around with us. Screen-based technologies have altered the dominant mode of sensory perception in our society, and in ways that promote disembodiment. For these technologies have placed us on a trajectory where sight reigns supreme over all other senses. We have become, in other words, an ocular-centric society, and as Giovanni Stagliani and Louis Sass explained in their paper, The Bracketing of Presence. In an ocular-centric or sight-centered society, not only does the individual become a passive receptor of images coming from the media, relationships between people also come increasingly to be mediated, even produced, by images. The other becomes an image for me, and I an image for the other. In such a society, the more embodied, participatory, and immersed kinds of visual experience are replaced by passive forms of seeing, a disembodied witnessing of mere images and representations. No longer are social interactions primarily between men and women in flesh and blood, as was the case for practically all human history. Now pictures, videos, strings of text, and emojis. Such are the disembodied forms of representation that define many of our relationships. Everything that was directly lived, writes Guy Deverd, has receded into a representation. Screen-based technologies have also led to a surge in forms of work and pastimes that sever the connection between body and mind. A lot of us spend upwards of 8 hours a day staring at a screen and tapping on a keyboard or mouse, as the rest of our body stays stationary. In our leisure, we take part in activities such as playing video games, watching Netflix or sports on TV, browsing the internet or scrolling social media feeds. All activities that are mind-rich and body-poor. In the last few years, there has been a further accelerant added to the disembodying trends of modern society, namely lockdowns and the fear of COVID. Sight is usurping touch. Images are decomposing bodies. Virtuality is replacing reality. And now the fear of being contaminated by the COVID virus has further reinforced the tendencies toward decorporealization, dematerialization, and a social isolation, at least in terms of body-to-body relationships. Instead of working in the presence of others and attending face-to-face meetings in the flesh, lockdowns forced many into remote work and a reliance on the disembodied video chat. Some people became so afraid of other people that social events over video became the norm. Children were conditioned to fear playing with friends, and even doctors' visits were done remotely. While some have overcome this neurotic fear of other people in the flesh and blood, others are still petrified and remain working remotely, socializing with images and taking part in pastimes that lack the presence of real people. A severing of the connection between body and mind is disorienting and leads to a myriad of life problems. To understand some of these, we can turn to the condition of schizophrenia, which, as Louis Sass and Elizabeth Pienkos write, consists of an extreme disembodiment, a sense of radical separation from one's own being as a physical entity. Firstly, disembodiment affects movement. When disconnected from the body, we do not move in the graceful manner that signifies health, but in a jerky and rigid manner. Literal jerkiness of body movement is already found as a prodrome to schizophrenia, i.e. before the illness is manifest, explains Ian McGilchrist. Disembodiment also disrupts the ability to tap into the power of the intuitive self. Intuition is knowledge or wisdom which is not preceded by chains of explicit thought or reasoning. Instead, intuition occurs in flashes of insight, or wells up through physical sensations in the body. For example, we may have a gut feeling or butterflies in our stomach. To access our intuitions, we must be firmly connected to the body and capable of sensing the physical signals that emanate from it, or as Ian McGilchrist explains, even if intuitions manifest as cognitive, they are embodied, in the sense that they are both in the form of mind and in form of the motion of our limbs, our breathing and pulse, the emotion of our heart and gut and mind, together with alert perception and intelligent insight, all manifest in interaction with, rather than abstraction from, the world. When disconnected from the body, the ability to act with the intuitive skill of common sense, or what the Italian philosopher Giambattista Vico called judgment without reflection, will falter. For common sense, as McGilchrist explains, is the ultimate embodied skill, and much of the suffering of the schizophrenic arises from their lack of common sense. For as McGilchrist explains, a loss of common sense is perhaps the most invariable accompaniment of schizophrenia. In such patients, a return of common sense, if it can be procured, is a sign of recovery. Lacking common sense, the schizophrenic will turn to overthinking as a replacement. The schizophrenic mind, in other words, runs wild in a state of hyper-awareness as they consciously process information that for others is known implicitly with the power of intuition and common sense. For as McGilchrist writes, schizophrenics attempt to compensate for a loss of intuition and common sense, of that vital, pre-reflective grasp of reality, by a sort of pseudo-philosophizing or hyper-reflection on experience, essentially a disease of over-awareness, in which things that should run smoothly at the pre-conscious level are yanked into the focus of awareness, where life comes to a juddering halt. It is not just the schizophrenic who overthinks in response to a lack of common sense. Rather, this cognitive style, albeit in a milder form, has spread throughout the population at large. Disconnected from the body, many of us rely too little on its intuitive wisdom and lean too heavily on the power of consciousness. The growing consciousness is a danger and a disease, wrote Friedrich Nietzsche. These disembodying social trends, fueled by the excessive use of screen-based technologies, are not leading us in a positive direction. If allowed to progress in the direction of a virtual world or a metaverse, where representations flood all our senses, we may reach the point where the representation becomes more important than the reality behind it. Or to quote the German anthropologist Ludwig Feuerbach, we will become a society who prefers the sign to the thing signified, the copy to the original, representation to reality, appearance to essence. In 1962, when screen-based technologies were still in their infancy, Daniel Boorstin saw such a dystopic society begin to form in embryo, and as he warned, we suffer primarily not from our vices or our weaknesses, but from our illusions. We are haunted not by reality, but by those images we have put in their place. In a world where the image and representation are more important than the reality of what is signified, man will become increasingly disembodied and so move further down the spectrum of a schizophrenic-like condition. However, unlike the schizophrenic, we live in this disembodied world of our own accord. We choose to take part in the activities that disconnect us from our body, and we choose to do it for hour upon hour, day after day. But we can make different choices. We can increase the amount of time we spend with people in the flesh and blood, take part in pastimes that use more than just eyes, ears, and fingertips, and limit how often we stare at screens. And for those who choose more of the real over the virtual, and who use more of the body in interaction with the real world, such a choice will be a step toward a revitalization of life. For as Nietzsche wrote, "The body is a great sage, a many with one purpose, a war and a peace, a flock and a shepherd. There is more sense in your body than in your best wisdom."
Advil Extra Strength Liquid Gels are tough on everyday headaches and migraines. So when pain says you can't, Advil says you can.
The thing that's different about a Vrbo vacation home?
The masses have never thirsted after truth. They turn aside from evidence that is not to their taste, preferring to deify error if error seduced them. Whoever can supply them with illusions is easily their master. Whoever attempts to destroy their illusions is always their victim. Diseases of the body can spread through a population and reach epidemic proportions, but so too can diseases of the mind. And of these epidemics of the latter variety, the mass psychosis is the most dangerous. During a mass psychosis, madness becomes the norm in a society, and delusionary beliefs spread like a contagion. But as delusions can take many forms, and as madness can manifest in countless ways, the specific manner in which a mass psychosis unfolds will differ based on the historical and cultural context of the infected society. In the past, mass psychoses have led to witch hunts, genocides, and even dancing manias. But in the modern era, it is the mass psychosis of totalitarianism that is the greatest threat. Totalitarianism, writes Arthur Versluis, is the modern phenomenon of total centralized state power, coupled with the obliteration of individual human rights. In the totalized state, there are those in power, and there are the objectified masses, the victims. In a totalitarian society, the population is divided into two groups, the rulers and the ruled, and both groups undergo a pathological transformation. The rulers are elevated to an almost godlike status, which is diametrically opposed to our nature as imperfect beings who are easily corrupted by power. The masses, on the other hand, are transformed into the dependent subjects of these pathological rulers and take on a psychologically regressed and childlike status. Hannah Arendt, one of the 20th century's preeminent scholars of this form of rule, called totalitarianism an attempted transformation of human nature itself. But this attempted transformation only turns sound minds into sick minds. For as the Dutch medical doctor who studied the mental effects of living under totalitarianism wrote, there is in fact much that is comparable between the strange reactions of the citizens of totalitarianism and their culture as a whole, on the one hand, and the reactions of the sick schizophrenic on the other. The social transformation that unfolds under totalitarianism is built upon and sustained by delusions. For only deluded men and women regress to the childlike status of obedient and submissive subjects, and hand over complete control of their lives to politicians and bureaucrats. Only a deluded ruling class will believe that they possess the knowledge, wisdom, and acumen to completely control society in a top-down manner. And only when under the spell of delusions would anyone believe that a society composed of power-hungry rulers on the one hand, and a psychologically regressed population on the other, will lead to anything other than mass suffering and social ruin. But what triggers the psychosis of totalitarianism? As was explored in the previous video of this series, the mass psychosis of totalitarianism begins in a society's ruling class. The individuals that make up this class, be it politicians, bureaucrats, or crony capitalists, are very prone to delusions that augment their power, and no delusion is more attractive to the power-hungry than the delusion that they can and should control and dominate a society. When a ruling elite becomes possessed by a political ideology of this sort, be it communism, fascism, or technocracy, the next step is to induce a population into accepting their rule by infecting them with the mass psychosis of totalitarianism. This psychosis has been induced many times throughout history, and as Myrlu explains, it is simply a question of reorganizing and manipulating collective feelings in the proper way. The general method by which the members of a ruling elite can accomplish this end is called menticide, with the etymology of this word being a killing of the mind. And as Myrlu further explains, menticide is an old crime against the human mind and spirit, but systematized anew. It is an organized system of psychological intervention and judicial perversion through which a ruling class can imprint their own opportunistic thoughts upon the minds of those they plan to use and destroy. Priming a population for the crime of menticide begins with the sowing of fear. For as was explored in the first video of this series, when an individual is flooded with negative emotions, such as fear or anxiety, he or she is very susceptible to a descent into the delusions of madness. Threats, real, imagined, or fabricated, can be used to sow fear, but a particularly effective technique is to use waves of terror. Under this technique, the sowing of fear is staggered with periods of calm, but each of these periods of calm is followed by the manufacturing of an even more intense spell of fear. And on the process goes. For as Myrlu writes, each wave of terrorizing creates its effects more easily after a breathing spell than the one that preceded it, because people are still disturbed by their previous experience. Morality becomes lower and lower, and the psychological effects of each new propaganda campaign become stronger. It reaches a public already softened up. While fear primes a population for menticide, the use of propaganda to spread misinformation and to promote confusion with respect to the source of the threats and the nature of the crisis helps to break down the minds of the masses. Government officials and their lackeys in the media can use contradictory reports, nonsensical information, and even blatant lies, as the more they confuse, the less capable will a population be to cope with the crisis and diminish their fear in a rational and adaptive manner. Confusion, in other words, heightens the susceptibility of a descent into the delusions of totalitarianism. Or as Mirlu explains, logic can be met with logic, while illogic cannot. It confuses those who think straight. The big lie and monotonously repeated nonsense have more emotional appeal than logic and reason. While the people are still searching for a reasonable counter-argument to the first lie, the totalitarians can assault them with another. Never before in history have such effective means existed to manipulate a society into the psychosis of totalitarianism. Smartphones and social media, television and the internet, all in conjunction with algorithms that quickly censor the flow of unwanted information, allow those in power to easily assault the minds of the masses. What is more, the addictive nature of these technologies means that many people voluntarily subject themselves to the ruling elite's propaganda with a remarkable frequency. Modern technology, explains Mirlu, teaches man to take for granted the world he is looking at. He takes no time to retreat and reflect. Technology lures him on, dropping him into its wheels and movements. No rest, no meditation, no reflection, no conversation. The senses are continually overloaded with stimuli. Man doesn't learn to question his world anymore. The screen offers him answers, ready-made. But there is a further step the would-be totalitarian rulers can take to increase the chance of a totalitarian psychosis. And this is to isolate the victims and to disrupt normal social interactions. When alone and lacking normal interactions with friends, family, and co-workers, an individual becomes far more susceptible to delusions for several reasons. Firstly, they lose contact with the corrective force of the positive example, for not everyone is tricked by the machinations of the ruling elite, and the individuals who see through the propaganda can help free others from the menticidal assault. If, however, isolation is enforced, the power of these positive examples greatly diminishes. But another reason that isolation increases the efficacy of menticide is because, like many other species, human beings are more easily conditioned into new patterns of thought and behavior when isolated. Or as Mirlu explains with regards to the physiologist Ivan Pavlov's work on behavioral conditioning, Pavlov made another significant discovery. The conditioned reflex could be developed most easily in a quiet laboratory with a minimum of disturbing stimuli. Every trainer of animals knows this from his own experience. Isolation and the patient repetition of stimuli are required to tame wild animals. The totalitarians have followed this rule. They know that they can condition their political victims most quickly if they are kept in isolation. Alone, confused, and battered by waves of terror, a population under an attack of menticide descends into a hopeless and vulnerable state. The never-ending stream of propaganda turns minds once capable of rational thought into playhouses of irrational forces. And with chaos swirling around them and within them, the masses crave a return to a more ordered world. The would-be totalitarians can now take the decisive step. They can offer a way out and a return to order in a world that seems to be moving rapidly in the opposite direction. But all this comes at a price. The masses must give up their freedom and cede control of all aspects of life to the ruling elite. They must relinquish their capacity to be self-reliant individuals who are responsible for their own lives and become submissive and obedient subjects. The masses, in other words, must descend into the delusions of the totalitarian psychosis. Totalitarianism, writes Mirlu, is man's escape from the fearful realities of life into the virtual womb of the leaders. The individual's actions are directed from this womb, from the inner sanctum. Man need no longer assume responsibility for his own life. The order and logic of the prenatal world reign. There is peace and silence, the peace of utter submission. But the order of a totalitarian world is a pathological order. by enforcing a strict conformity and requiring a blind obedience from the citizenry, totalitarianism rids the world of the spontaneity that produces many of life's joys and the creativity that drives society forward. The total control of this form of rule, no matter under what name it is branded, be it rule by scientists and doctors, politicians and bureaucrats, or a dictator, breeds stagnation, destruction, and death on a mass scale. And so perhaps the most important question facing the world is how can totalitarianism be prevented? And if a society has been induced into the early stages of this mass psychosis, can the effects be reversed? While one can never be sure of the prognosis of a collective madness, there are steps that can be taken to help effectuate a cure. This task, however, necessitates many different approaches from many different people. For just as the menticidal attack is multi-pronged, so too must be the counterattack. According to Carl Jung, for those of us who wish to help return sanity to an insane world, the first step is to bring order to our own minds and to live in a way that provides inspiration for others to follow. It is not for nothing that our age cries out for the Redeemer personality, for the one who can emancipate himself from the grip of the collective psychosis and to save at least his own soul, who lights a beacon of hope for others, proclaiming that here is at least one man who has succeeded in extricating himself from the fatal identity with the group psyche. But assuming one is living in a manner free of the grip of the psychosis, there are further steps that can be taken. Information that counters the propaganda should be spread as far and as wide as possible, for the truth is more powerful than the fiction and falsities peddled by the would-be totalitarian rulers, and so their success is in part contingent on their ability to censor the free flow of information. Another tactic is to use humor and ridicule to delegitimize the ruling elite, or as Mirlu explains, we must learn to treat the demagogue and aspirant dictators in our midst with the weapon of ridicule. The demagogue himself is almost incapable of humor of any sort, and if we treat him with humor, he will begin to collapse. A tactic recommended by Václav Havel, a political dissident under Soviet communist rule, who later became president of Czechoslovakia, is the construction of what are called parallel structures. A parallel structure is any form of organization, business, institution, technology, or creative pursuit that exists physically within a totalitarian society, yet morally outside of it. In communist Czechoslovakia, Havel noted that these parallel structures were more effective at combating totalitarianism than political action. Furthermore, when enough parallel structures are created, a second culture, or parallel society, spontaneously forms and functions as an enclave of freedom and sanity within a totalitarian world. Or as Havel explains in his book, The Power of the Powerless. What else are parallel structures than an area where a different life can be lived? A life that is in harmony with its own aims, and which in turn structures itself in harmony with those aims. What else are those initial attempts at social self-organization than the efforts of a certain part of society to rid itself of the self-sustaining aspects of totalitarianism, and thus, to extricate itself radically from its involvement in the totalitarian system? But above all else, what is required to prevent a full descent into the madness of totalitarianism is action by as many people as possible. For just as the ruling elite do not sit around passively, but instead take deliberate steps to increase their power, so too, an active and concerted effort must be made to move the world back in the direction of freedom. This can be an immense challenge in a world falling prey to the delusions of totalitarianism, but as Thomas Paine noted, tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph.
Look at this guy. He's really working hard. You know what he'll get? Muscle pain. Give up.
Let's do a little reshaping on this as well. I need to spend those allies. Oh yeah, Sun that one's good. Oops, my microphone moved down. Actually, this. Just make this thing hit hard. That's a tricky one. Yeah, let's make this sucker PvP ready. Handling and reload. No. That. To help this one. Yep. My Enigma is no longer balanced for PvP and PvE. It's now ready for Crucible. Now I've spent a few alloys, I can... Are you kidding me? Ay. Fine. Don't want to. Sweet. It's just one at a time. I was worried I was going to discard the whole stack. Let's just go to that. Either the Taipan or the Amenta AR2. Okay. Shape one of these auto rifles. Oh yeah, that's right. Keep forgetting you gotta level the thing up before you get the good stuff. Oh, this sucker doesn't need range. Heck yeah, high capacity. It's gonna be useful. Ooh, it's got some good ones. Oh, that's just cheating, almost. Yeah, continuously hold down. Oh, nice. Sweet. Very useful for fire. thought so. Good thing I checked. It was still set up for the last time I tried to raid. Nope. Give me brushed. Yep. Yep, and yep. Okay, fragments. Yes. 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 And yes. Me as well. I came to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum. Oh yeah, my coffee's getting cold. Damn it, I let my coffee get too cold. Yuck. Okay, so it is an auto and it is a pulse. Good, that's ready. Will be useful too. Okay, ready. Oh man, that's where I messed up. So I have to use 2. Where's the insert recovery? Recover for this. Oh yeah. Before I start, camera boost. Gambit. No. 2 missions at the same time. I hope my team is unstoppable. There we go, that's a course. Let's quickly change that to that. That'll help. I'm gonna have a quick one.
You're in the thick, Guardian. Hive, taken. Pretty sure they know you're coming now. Then there's no time to waste. Guardian, I need those cleared so I can tap into the network. Death Tongue spotted. Target that acolyte, Guardian. Hang on, Jinju. We're in for some chop. The Hive are sending an ogre. Back to a holding pattern. Good luck. Grabbing you a laser core for the gunk. We'll need to open up the campus again. Towers ahead are back online and reading you as hostile. Mind your steps. Perimeter towers in range. Stay hidden, Guardian. Hang on, Jinju. We're in for some chop.
No, I messed up. You don't have to come back, Fog. It's okay. Thank you.
Moving back to a holding pattern. Good luck. knight we're facing. I've learned more. Their name is Kelgarath and serve as one of Xivu's lieutenants. The Hive here ties to them. They say the knight is risen from bones, immortal. We'll see. What we can of Charlemagne Guardian. Slip away safely.
I forgot there's that little jump. That's what I get for walking backwards.
like I've said this 1,000 times, but Red, it is so damn good to have you back.
Yes, it is also good to be alive again. I am enjoying the company of friends. While my core processes were suspended, I was able to perceive basic vocal patterns. Your voice was calming.
I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry I couldn't... I should never have let that happen in the first place.
Your guilt is unnecessary, but touching. Thank you for not giving up on me.
I forgot I had this.
We have no time for pleasantries, Osiris. I bring grim tidings. My Techians have been trying to make sense of Xivu Arath's tactics. Her armies are legion, yet she commits minimal forces to battle.
Minimal forces? Every Wrathborn we cut down is replaced by 2 more.
She could replace them tenfold, so why does she show restraint? Her worm feeds on warfare. The more violent the act, the greater the power she draws from it.
Much like Savathun's worm fed on guile and deceit. Do you mean to say that...
This is not a war. It is a ritual. Her death singers weave their magic and prepare for a grand sacrifice.
If so, our strategy remains unchanged. Retake the Warsats and eradicate the Wrathborn.
Just as Xivu Arath desires. The Warsats are immensely powerful. Their use would result in unparalleled destruction. She cares not which side is obliterated. Her worm will gorge itself on the carnage either way.
She would turn her armies into blood sacrifices. And the Warsats would be the blade.
Overwhelming force has proven to be the only effective tactic against the Hive. Without it, I do not know what to do.
Then I suggest you think of something, and quickly.
I will apprise your vanguard of these findings.
Zavala's office. Ooh. Last time I remember a quest bringing us to Zavala's office was when Stars was trapped. Never-ending Vex thingamajig. Kill. Just because.
Think of it as training, Guardian. You can only get stronger from this.
The Warsats are a means to an end. Xivu Arath will bask in the destruction they bring, and open the Ascendant Plane above Earth, as she did on Tora Bottle. It does not matter who pulls the trigger. We must cease our efforts to restore the War Mind.
No. We've worked too long and too hard to stop now. Rasputin is our best shot at winning this war.
That is precisely my concern. He is a weapon made to be wielded.
He is more than a weapon. He's our ally. And he will act in humanity's best interest.
Are you certain? He has kept secrets in the past, acted without counsel or consensus.
So have you. Rasputin's made mistakes. But he's learned from them. The same as the rest of us.
Then I propose we aim not for total victory, but a stalemate. Allow Rasputin to prevent Xivu Arath from claiming her prize, and refrain from using it himself.
It's settled then. We hold the line.
It automatically took me from the tower to orbit. Now let's see, does it automatically take me to the helm next? Or am I going to be in orbit and have to port? Sweet, took me to the helm.
I am a machine of war, built for a singular purpose: to destroy any and all threats to humanity. Clovis and I disagreed on what constituted such threats, but not on the means to the end. On Mars, I developed the escalation protocol.
Ikora was so bright, so full of promise. How she glowed. Like the light filled her. But it was her eyes that convinced me to take her as my apprentice.
What did you see in them?
Hunger. She was desperate to prove herself back then. I knew the feeling well.
And you began now?
When Ikora looks in my eyes, what do you think she sees?
Everything that she always has.
She pities me, Mara.
As you and I have pitied others. Those who hang on our every word. Your cultists, my people. Do not mistake Ikora's pity for disdain. If she pities you, it is out of love.
I have no love for the cult of Osiris.
No. Ask me what I see when I look into your eyes, Osiris.
I will not, but you'll tell me just the same.
I see a man who is afraid he'll never be able to live up to the expectations that other people have placed on him. A man so afraid to hurt or be hurt that he spent his very long, very accomplished life holding those same people at arm's length. This burden, this inheritance of guilt, it is Ikora's too.
I never wanted this for her.
As your mentors never wanted it for you.
Our stuff really has changed. Or so it seems it has.
I keep coming back to a question that's been bugging me. Did I do the right thing? Teaching Rasputin art, philosophy, culture, transforming him from something capable of imitating human consciousness into this. Rasputin suffers because I made him capable of suffering. I always knew he would be a weapon of war, so was it right to make a weapon have self-doubts? Was it right to bring him back online when he'd shut himself down after the collapse? Elsie says she lives her life in a circle, repeating the same tragedies over and over again. And that's what's happening to Rasputin too. The collapse is here again, and maybe there's no solution. Maybe there's no hope for the future. Maybe I should go.
It's actually the right thing to teach an AI art, philosophy, finer details. It's worrisome if you try and teach AI. A whole bunch of stuff about that. Heck, I honestly think an AI should learn about Socrates. Plato. Learn about past wars in history and why they happen so they can stop it from happening. Learn how to think just beyond war and ending life. Socrates will teach you to question, why are you doing this? Is it really the right thing? Is there other ways through it?
Time to snag another submine fragment, Guardian. Get in and out before they even know what's hit them. More Hive and Exoscience trying to dig out secrets. Part of me just wants to say let Clovis rust, but we're better than that.
Sorry, I had to run to the washroom there.
Sub-level door is opening now.
A death singer's dirge. It's Xivu's battle song.
That was cool, he fell over the edge. That's an unstoppable ogre.
Salvation is our enemy, but I feel for these Elixni. From what I've heard, becoming a Wrathborn is not a walk in the park.
Duck, you use it on the door, not on enemies. Sweet, thank you, I didn't realize you already had. Sorry.
Without her Shrieker, Xivu Arath will be blind on Europa. You know what to do.
charge up the charge. Damn it!
Wide-scale assaults until Savathun's death. It is possible her presence acted as a deterrent, and her death facilitated necessary developments for an invasion.
That coincides with my experience in other timelines. The second collapse always seemed like it was waiting for some kind of trigger. But it's not something that we could have avoided. Maybe some things are set in stone.
Even stone can be eroded, Elsie. You and I must once again take the long view to find victory. Typical with this one. Damn it.
Still doing that silliness of forgetting to put the proper stuff on. One day he'll learn. Sweet. Uh-huh. Yeah, abilities. Never mind, actually. Just leave it to this. Yeah, let's do it. Oops, I forgot I was gonna level it up. Oh, silly of me.
Guardian, we've received limited intel regarding a Vex information depot. I want you to get in there and figure out what they know. Guardian, I'm making the elimination of Kargan your priority of this operation.
Bogus. How did you get to go straight through and I had to load? Boom. Wow, so you arseholes just start running and don't care about getting a good score. Great. Lovely. New light. You have to be.
There's Kargan.
Matters not you know about how fast you complete the frickin' things. All that matters is getting a great score by killing and killing and killing. I'm tired of frickin' idiots, man.
Firewall on this. That should slow it down. Location secured, Commander Zavala.
Good work, Gunn. What intel did you discover?
There's only one data artifact here, labeled Oxa,
Pathetic.
and it's
You know, it's so
seriously
simple to get platinum.
Metadata says it was last
So
accessed by an
simple.
Otzot centuries ago. What is Oxa? And who is Otzot?
Here, want to play a game? Want to play a game?
Those are questions for another day, I
Sick and
suppose.
tired of when people don't listen.
But for now, well done.
It's too funny, you know? It really is. Oh yeah. Excuse me, I was on the Triumphs page. That's why I wasn't over there. Until next time stream, I'm heading on. Got some shopping to do and some other stuff.